Hey, I realize the two of you haven't met, but you know, Regan's the big news, the one I've been using that tool I licensed off of you with. Basically, we've been going through and we've been getting him ready for a high level audit with DIBCAC and C3PAO. So I just wanted the two of you to meet. You want to, I mean, Regan's kind of the mastermind behind that tool. So
Yeah, congratulations. I know you guys, I've heard a lot of great things about you, Zbigniew, and Aero-Glen really doing the heavy lifting to get ready for these requirements. I know it's very difficult and very complex, and it's awesome that you guys have really done your homework, and we're glad to help you in any way that we could have to help you succeed for sure.
hey,
Regan,
Zbigniew, can you kind of tell Regan in your own words how you think things are going and how they went?
sure. Regan, finally glad to meet you.
Of course.
So we had started on this journey probably in 2020.
Hmm.
So it's taken us 2+ years to get to where we are. And what was interesting about it is every time we reached a milestone, and it probably started late in 21, we thought we were ready
Hmm.
for an audit. And it's one of those, every time you relook at some of those controls or the documentation, you go, no, I'm not. And so then finally, when we reached out to Darold, we thought we were ready again. When then Darold introduced your tool and browsed through that, we realized yet again we've got more to do there in terms of polishing. And in this case, I think we reached that point of it was less about solutions for us and whether or not it's the right solution to meet that particular control.
Right.
And it was more, and this is where I think Ghassan and Darold shined for us and were instrumental. And then they brought this audit aspect to the equation, where up until then we were strictly, it's a small team of folks that are practical, focused on a technical solution and how it's going to work. That includes processes and procedures, but less about the holistic angle of it from an outsider's perspective and how an auditor may look at it.
Exactly.
So putting your tool into the equation, putting Ghassan's experience into the equation, also opened up my eyes tremendously around looking at every one of the controls from a different angle all over again and seeing where we potentially lack maturity around the process because the documentation just didn't highlight certain aspects of what we've been doing or we weren't giving ourselves credit for it.
Yeah.
So that was a excellent exercise that we went through. In fact, we're still going to go through it again later this week and continue to pick on some of the other controls, as we go through it in preparation for the audit coming up end of the month.
That's outstanding. A lot of times, it takes organizations, you walk through the technical controls and those are difficult and not intuitive, and how to get your arms around them. And then when you look at the subtleties of definitions and the interconnectedness and interdependence between the controls, then you sort of realize that this is really sort of weaving a fabric, across the organization. And of course, that spans the organization not just in IT, but also cuts across into the business processes, right?
Absolutely.
And so, it's really most organizations walk through the exact same sort of understanding as they sort of learn more, and when they deep dive into the requirements, then they realize, we need to go back and we need to polish this even better, because many organizations don't realize that they probably don't have their arms around the requirements to a level of detail that is the expectation of the DoD and of course the C3POs when they're certifying, and that level of detail is everything. When we look at the last year, a little over a year and a half, over 300 C3POs have gone through this process and failed, and there are literally just over a half dozen that whose business model it is to certify others. And so I think if we take our lessons away from that, we realize that there's an expectation here and a level of detail. If the C3POs didn't get it, then DIB organizations need to take a really hard look, just like you guys did, and say, how do we know this better? How do we understand it better? And then sort of integrate that holistically, like you said, across the organization, and then be able to demonstrate that in policies, procedures, and evidence.
Right. No, that you're absolutely right. When we started this process, there were, or still are, frankly, I think, very little resources out there for organizations like us to
Absolutely.
help interpret and better understand what those requirements are. And
Yes.
every time you reach out to someone, someone's either got an opinion or backs it up with, but don't go to bank with that, you know, and so you're left on your own. And
Yeah.
then, and exactly like you said, you hear some of the 3CPAOs finally getting online and the experiences that they've gone through. When you start talking to them, they've got certain opinions around some of these things. Hopefully they're more black and white at this point rather than opinions. But it was always a fear of ours is, did we get that understanding right or not? Back to Gassan and Darold, that's where we got to at least banter back and forth on that and make sure we understood them correctly or not. And there was a lot of, no, we missed it, we got some holes here, et cetera, and fine tuning that. So hopefully by the time we go through the audit, we got less than or zero surprises, but I'm expecting that we're always going to learn something from it.
Well, listen, in the last 3 or 2.5 years of in partnership with TMAC and Cross Timbers, PTAC, the honor and privilege of walking hand in hand with Darold and the others in his team and being able to help organizations is really been an outstanding experience for us. And in that hands in and muddy boots, when you're in the trenches with small organizations and mid-sized organizations trying to navigate these requirements, you really come to an understanding of the challenges, the frustrations, the inconsistencies, that you talked about from person to person. Those things are all, detrimental to one goal, which is to meet these requirements, secure the data, and then get back to the products and services that you provide for Bell and others. And so for me, the opportunity to really walk this through with you honestly really is an honor and a privilege. And for you guys to be first in the chute is an incredible really demonstration of, your commitment in walking through this. And quite honestly, I know people say this and they really don't mean it, but if we can help you, if you have any further questions as you're polishing, over the next several weeks, do not hesitate. Darold has my contact information. Do not hesitate to reach out to us, and I don't mind, providing that time for you, at no charge, to ensure that you and your team are successful. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is, my goal, whether it's as a director on the CMMC accreditation body or working with industry working group, or now having launched the CMMC Industry Standards Council, our goal is to provide consistency and a safe harbor for organizations to know what to do, to be able to know who they can trust, and that will provide them the right decision making on technologies, investments, and time and resources, and the disruption, frankly, of making all of these changes across the organization and making that investment and getting it right the first time. So, that is absolutely hands down the greatest challenge that we face across the CMMC ecosystem. And I am very grateful to Darold and TMAC as being a part of that partnership, really, since Darold and I's very first conversation 2.5 years ago, and then walking before the accreditation body and all of that, and walking through this process, and really enduring to be able to try to get this right and get it right for organizations the first time.
You said that well. It's a hard journey. There's a lot of disbelievers. There's a lot of naysayers around it. The whole idea of we went through CMMC 1.0, then jumped to 2.0, a lot of strong opinions around let's just wait for 3.0, not bother, so there's a lot of people just sitting back, right? We took a different approach to it. Hope it doesn't backfire. We strongly believe in what we're doing with it. And in fact, as we've gone through it, we frankly doubled our team from the outset. And again, we're only a small team. We started with 2, now we're at 4 within the group to focus on the implementation of these standards. As we've gone through it, we realized we're never going to go down. It started as this is to implement, and then we'll go back down to normal state. But we're realizing, no, that's a commitment and an investment we're going to have to stay with. So the team's not shrinking. In fact, we're looking at possibly maybe growing it. and focus more on the compliance side of it as we go forward, because we got to maintain this thing, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, the amazing thing for Aero-Glen is this, and I hope that you're a part of really organizations that we've seen grow their top line revenue growth by saying to their customers, look, we are not hiding. We are standing out front to get this done and get it done right. We are protecting your data and the DoD's data, and we'll show you how we do that. And when we're not just going to check a box and send something in ambiguous and say, yeah, we're compliant, because everybody's doing that, unfortunately, for now.
Right.
The reality is we want to stand out, and we want to show you how we protect your data the right way. And we want your business. When you decide between us and our competitors, and you don't know whether or not our competitors are demonstrating the same standards in safeguarding the DoD's data, I want you to choose us. And that has been a very, very successful competitive advantage. Ironically enough, after 4 years past the deadline, it is an extraordinary competitive advantage. And quite frankly, what I see, Zbigniew, for Aero-Glen is that will create opportunity for you to win and retain business, because there are companies out there who are hiding, who are avoiding and waiting, and they, for better for worse, I wish they weren't, but they are going to be caught short, because we are not turning around. This is not changing. The requirements under CMMC 2.0 are the requirements underneath the federal standard, and CMMC frankly adds to those requirements, but does it in a way that navigates the organization through the CMMC certification process. But fundamentally, they are the same requirements that of the federal standard that's required of all organizations throughout the executive agencies.
But you are totally right. When I get pulled into customer meetings, it's usually to talk about where we are with cyber. And we kind of start going through where we are, what we've accomplished, what we're doing, and our commitment to it. The feedback from the customers or whoever's around the table is always positive. And they come out, it gives us a great feeling. It gives my management a great feeling of we're doing the right thing. We're going to stay committed to it. And the feedback that they're getting from their customers, this is going to be a competitive advantage. So we're all excited about getting through this process, for one, but at the same time, reaping potentially the rewards that come through it.
Well, Redspin, that's going to be doing your assessment, is an outstanding organization. They're part of the CMMC Industry Standards Council. I know them, and they participate with us actively. So you really couldn't pick a better organization out there. And they are a part of the CMMC EPU documentation set that you have, and the tool set that you have. And so, quite frankly, but to be honest, there's no fix, right? That everyone understands that your certification will be 100% earned, and this is the opportunity, though, for everyone to be on the same sheet of music and a uniform and consistent standard and expectation, so that your C3PO looks at you in a way that you're going to expect to be looked at, and so that you're not arguing over the definition of controlled environment, or you're not arguing over the what are the elements that are required of a access control, right? That is consistent between you both, and that standard, of course, is either the minimum standard or better than the minimum standard of what is expected for CMMC. So I think that consistent uniform single sort of source of truth, if you will, for reference documentation really will help provide clarity and consistency between the C3PO and the OSC, so that the OSC has got the very best chance to look at the documentation, understand it, and then simply get it right the first time.
Right.
Well, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure working with both of you, because you both have really I always had this, I had to make things simple over a 30-year military career. So I always tried to do the right thing for the right reason. And, both of the two of you are walking right down the center of that trail of doing the right thing for the right reason. And the level of competency I have in both of you is extremely high. I'm looking forward to hearing good news after the audit at the end of the month. But Zbigniew, I mean, you got a fantastic organization, and any prime would be lucky to work with you.
Well, I appreciate that. And Daryl, as you know, you're going to be a part of that assessment as moral support or whatever you want to call
Right.
it. So you're going to witness it real time, see as we go through
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So,
Well,
Right,
listen,
well-
you guys don't be nervous, okay? I'm sure that there's a little bit of jitters, but
absolutely.
you've got a highly competent. I mean, here's the good news: you've got a highly competent C3PO, okay? They didn't, get their certification by luck. They really know what they're doing. You've got a uniform and consistent reference documentation and reference standard. You've had great help from TMAC, and you've got people around you that care about you and that really want Aero-Glen to succeed and really set the precedent. At the end of the day, you're one of the very first, Zbigniew. I mean, you guys know that. I mean, you're second in the chute of all the voluntary certifications, and that's extraordinary. I mean, I can't tell you how extraordinary that is. So, having looked at really, the unfortunately, the ground is littered with candidates, C3PO candidates who didn't pass. And I think that this is extraordinary opportunity for you to demonstrate Aero-Glen's commitment to the standard, commitment to the requirements, and to show the rest of the DIB that yes, this is difficult, yes, it's complex, but given the right people who give you consistent and reliable and authoritative direction and guidance, that you can achieve this goal. And quite frankly, stop worrying about this and then get back to focusing on providing products and services to your customers. And that is really the very best story that we can tell throughout the CMMC ecosystem, that this is not impossible, that this in fact can be done. And it just takes commitment and just takes the sort of perseverance that you spoke of earlier.
I appreciate that.
Hey, Zbigniew, as soon as you are done with your audit, you pass your audit, and you're looking back on that and everything else, I'll get with you guys and I'll take you out to lunch or dinner.
Yeah.
I would look forward to that. That'd be good.
Yeah, and we would love to meet you guys in person too. I mean, you're right here local. I don't know if you knew this is big news, but we're right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So, if like I said, if you want to, we sort of get used to this virtual environment, but listen, if you would like a second set of eyes, I would love to come out and walk through you and have a sit down with your team. And in about 15 minutes, we'll know exactly where the outstanding pieces are and where we're those areas that you need to continue to polish, because at the end of the day, listen, there is no one more committed to your success, despite the fact that we haven't met, than DTC Global and TMAC, quite frankly. And our heart is in the mission. And so, quite frankly, whatever it takes to make your guys succeed and your team succeed, you don't hesitate to ask. I'm not saying that like, hey, let's have a beer sometime, and that never happens. Quite really, take a look at your team. We would love to spend some time with you guys and help.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, one of the things I didn't, I'm sorry, I was going to say one of the things I didn't mention, Zbigniew, is, I'm retired military. Regan here was a former Army Ranger. I mean, his heart's in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
We're 100% committed. Yep.
Now, one comment back to something you said. You said we'll know within 15 minutes exactly where you are. It's exactly what Robert Teague said out of Redspin when we first engaged with him. So I think you're right. It's, you can't really put lipstick on this.
No,
you've got to demonstrate it and know it. So.
Yep. I mean, the very first, indicators and warnings, considering our industry, indicators and warnings are, is your documentation right? Is it thorough? Is it detailed? Does it cover the necessary fundamentals? Are your people trained and knowledgeable about the requirements? Can they speak to those requirements? They don't have to, they're not automatons, right? They can have all the reference documentation that they need in front of them. Do the people within your business process understand CUI and understand how to protect it and understand what it looks like when they see it? Right. And those processes that cover, identifying, marking, and safeguarding it. All of those things really come together to demonstrate one fundamental mechanism that has to be in place to be certified, is that you are safeguarding, protecting the data according to the requirements. It's just that simple. But you know that when you tease out the details of that, that can be very challenging for organizations given certain reference architectures and the IT side and
Yep.
business processes and complexity there. So, you know, the mountain that we climb to be successful in business is not an easy one. And this certainly is not an easy one to be commensurate with accepting the responsibility related to protecting the data that we're entrusted with and that we developed as defense contractors. So, you know, once again, it's baby steps up the mountain, and just be surrounded by people who care about you and can give you the guidance that you need to really enable you and empower your team to make good decisions and to execute.
Appreciate all the support, guys.
Of
Thank you.
course.